Welcome to Alaska EdVenture, hosted by Dr. Meinert, Superintendent of the Fairbanks North Starborough School District. This award-winning podcast is your gateway to the heart of Alaska's educational landscape. In each episode, we'll explore the unique perspectives of guests who are shaping education in the last frontier. Join us on Alaska EdVenture as we share the insights and inspirations found in Alaska's K-12 classrooms.
Welcome back to the Alaska EdVenture podcast. I'm Dr. Luke Meinert, Superintendent of the Fairbanks North Starborough School District, and super excited to talk about strategic planning today. I'll let my guests introduce themselves and what their role in strategic planning will be.
Hello, my name is Drew Schantz. I'm an associate partner with Education Elements. We are really fortunate to be the facilitators of the strategic planning process here. I'm excited to unpack some of what that looks like over the course of the next couple minutes here. I'm based myself in San Francisco, but have had the fortune of working with Fairbanks in a couple different capacities over the past 5 or 6 years or so. So excited to be back and excited to be talking strategic planning.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we're excited to have Ed Elements back, and specifically Drew back. We've had some opportunities to work together in the past, and it's just great to have you back in Fairbanks and lead this important initiative for us.
Yeah, thanks.
And Brandy, how about you?
I'm Brandy Harty. I am the current president of the Fairbanks North Starborough School Board. So the board is the ones who will be in charge of the finalization of the plan and kind of carrying it out over the next 5 years, the general life of a plan. But it's very much a community strategic plan. So we're just the ones that you elected to help facilitate and make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll dive into that about timelines and community processes involved because, as Brandy said, this is a community plan and we want this to help guide our school district for the next 5 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. So, Drew, can you talk a little bit about Ed Elements and their experience here in Fairbanks and then also their experience helping school districts with strategic planning?
Yeah, so I'll start with Fairbanks first, just because we're here. We started to work with Fairbanks back in 2017, specifically around one of our core offerings, which is instructional design. So we worked with teachers, instructional coaches, and principals on specifically our personalized learning framework and how to make the learning experience more student-centered. From there, we did some work around competency-based learning, which is where I kind of came into the picture. Did some leadership development with principals at one point too, and then in March 2020. A large life event happened. I don't know if you remember what that was, but I'm blanking on it. And we really quickly had to pivot on our work, and we actually helped the district with their return to learn plan in a time where not a lot of people knew what to do. We sort of collaborated and figured out how to come back to school safely together. So it was dozens of Zoom meetings and strategy sessions and starting to scenario plan around what could this crazy world that we live in right now look like. And we spent a lot of time thoughtfully thinking about the ways that we can bring kids back as quickly and safely as possible. We paused our relationship for a little while, and then we're fortunate enough to come back and help with the strategic planning process, which is one of the core offerings that we really offer to districts across the country. I think we're probably up to maybe 50 or 60 districts that we've completed plans with so far. And we really take a responsive approach to strategic planning. So we believe that strategic plans should not be static documents or shiny posters that sit on the shelf or go up on the wall. They should really be barometers for actionable decision-making and really a reflection of the communities that they are a part of. I think as you look from strategic plan to strategic plan in all the districts that we've supported and other districts who have created them, by and large, there are a lot of similarities, but we're in the age of AI, right? Like you could, in theory, sit down and ask ChatGPT, write me a strategic plan for a school district. And you could do that in 5 minutes, maybe less. But I think what that really fails to ignore is the incredibly valuable aspect of community engagement to inform what the strategic plan is and what it is going to be and how it's going to change the trajectory of the school district for the better based on the unique needs of the community that it represents. So the value that we really bring is to lend that human-centered design experience, that process to the strategic plan development so that it can be as truly reflective of the district as possible. And we do that through a number of different ways I think we'll probably get into the process a little bit more in depth, but whether it's related to stakeholder engagement, facilitating that design thinking process, actually talking about implementation, how to bring that plan to life, those are the things that we're really excited to help the school district to do.
Yeah, well, we're really excited for you to help the school district with that. I mean, you are masterful in facilitating strategic planning. It's really helpful to have a third party come in that doesn't have any preconceived notions or bias. Right. That can be really honest and have honest conversations with us, and keep that conversation going with our community. And we'll later on in the podcast, we'll talk about our first 2 in-person sessions that we had this week, which was really exciting, and part of the reason why Drew is here in Fairbanks in our studio. So we'll debrief that. But just did an excellent job in those situations and having the conversations flow. So nicely done.
Thank you.
And Brandy, when we're talking about strategic planning, why have a strategic plan for the school district?
Wow. We went through a pretty painful budget session last year. And one of the things I think that came loud and clear from our community was things are happening too fast. We don't understand where we're at. We don't understand the process. And it wasn't that maybe the information wasn't there. It was that it wasn't in a way that they felt they could access it. It wasn't working for them. And that then is a failure to have that communication if it's not getting received. And by slowing down and making the strategic plan a community process, the community understands what we're doing. There are some big, hard changes. I'm born and raised here. Schools don't look the way they did when I was attending them. And that's hard, and change is hard. By doing a deliberate strategic planning process, we bring the community along, we get their input, we make sure that they have ownership. I was a teacher in this district as well, and I know I did not feel ownership of our previous strategic plan. And that feels like maybe a missed opportunity. So we want to learn from our past. We want to make sure that we're getting everyone's buy-in and that this plan reflects where Fairbanks wants to see Fairbanks go.
Yeah, I love that. Really is our guidepost for the next 5 years. And hopefully then as the board is doing budgeting in the next years to come, that we're continually referencing back to the strategic plan. It really is the focal point for all of the things that we want to happen here in Fairbanks. And obviously having the community involved in that is important. We want the plan to be reflective of the community and the community to be really engaged in creating that plan. So Drew, can you talk a little bit about the process that we'll go through to create this strategic plan over the next year?
Yeah, so we got started actually back in May. We came up to the district and spent 2 or 3 days, my colleagues, Anna, Sarah, and myself, facilitating some focus groups and really understanding from a human perspective, what are the things that, first of all, folks in Fairbanks really value and love about the district? What are the points of pride? And then what are the opportunities that we can really lean in and start to move the needle and grow in the ways that individuals want to see the district evolve into in the future? So we took probably hundreds of pages of notes, listened a lot, tried to understand and distill all of that information down, paired with some quantitative data that we received through a community-wide survey. I think we got close to 3,500 responses through that. And speaking of the focus groups, we, I think, conducted 24 here in the district.
Which is incredible because you normally conduct like eight and when you go into
the
communities.
The standard is significantly less.
Yeah.
But I think it is a testament to what the district wanted to achieve with this plan, is to really make sure that there were as many avenues and mediums as possible for folks to provide some input at this point in the process. And then started the really sort of tedious work on our end, taking all of that qualitative and quantitative information and distilling it down into something that was digestible. And that's really what our work yesterday was all about, was taking our survey data, our focus group data, turning that over to one of the groups that is really pivotal in the strategic planning process, which what we call the steering team. And it was their responsibility to sort of take that data, ask themselves the question, okay, here's what we're reading. What does this mean? And how do we take this and start to formulate the initial sort of shell of what the strategic plan is going to look like? So we had conversations around what are the trends that we're seeing? How do we group these trends into what we're going to call strategic pillars? How does this sort of relate to the individual reflections of the folks who were in the room of what they wanted to see in the district themselves? And then also we had a conversation around what are the values that we're really going to hold true and make sure that we are sort of measuring ourselves up against, and to sort of keep us honest, I guess, in terms of how that strategic plan is going to go. From here, we'll sort of take what those initial pillars are going to be and start to articulate what does that actually mean? What is the definition of what one of those pillars are? We'll then we'll turn that over back to the steering team and then eventually some pillar teams or planning teams. And they'll take each of those pillars and start to articulate what are the specific initiatives, success criteria, and actions that need to be accomplished in order for those strategic goals to be met. So that'll happen later on in the fall. We'll sort of go through some continuous iteration on those things until we get to a place where we have a strategic plan that we like to say is safe enough to try. And then that's when we'll kind of go into that process of starting to think about how do we launch this thing? How do we communicate it back to the community, gather some additional input, and then sort of put it into a package that we're really proud of and that we can start to run with. And at that point, it's really, as far as I'm concerned, the beginning of the process, because we have the plan. Now it's about putting it into action and actually getting some stuff done to show the public, to show the community that all of this time invested was really worth it, so that we have a thoughtful plan and process that we can take and make some really positive, actionable, and sustainable change happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And there'll certainly be community listening sessions or roundtables as we get more into the plan. We definitely want continued feedback on the direction we're headed, to do those dipsticks to make sure that we're headed in the right direction and we're not outside of what the community is really hoping for this plan.
Yeah, and I think that we always say that community engagement is a process, not an event. So we don't want to ever be in a place where we've, checked the box and said like, okay, community engaged, got it, we're just going to run. That really, when we see districts or really organizations that go into a strategic planning process with that mentality in mind, it's sort of like this one and done phenomenon where you really don't have a plan that's actionable and has this shared sense of ownership with the community. And we really want everyone to sort of understand like what their role in the strategic plan is going to be. Just because they haven't been a part of every step of the way and helped to author the plan and sort of like put the periods and the commas where they need to go, there still should be a really clear way for all members of the community, staff, students, parents, what have you. They should all know that this plan is my plan. I'm a part of this, and I'm going to help to bring these goals to life.
Yeah. And speaking of students, we do have a couple students on our steering team. And man, it is great to hear their voices in the room as, we're discussing different topics and pillars and values. And they're just so profound in the statements that they have and what's really important for them, and the realization that they understand the impact that this plan could have on their education now and into the future.
Totally. I think that's our favorite part is to have students in the room. And, the fact that the district was willing to give us some time to have some focus groups with students and then also actively involve them in the steering team, I think is a testament to the student-centered sort of mindset that exists here, and something that I think is going to continue in perpetuity in the strategic planning process.
Yeah, absolutely. And Inka and I are already in conversations about how to best reach the students on further iterations of our strategic plan. We know that maybe our listening sessions aren't as friendly to students as some other mediums are to gather feedback. And so we're going to work on ways that we can really ensure that we're getting meaningful student feedback into the strategic plan. So I'm looking forward to those conversations.
I love it.
Yeah. And then, Brandy, you alluded to the facilities component of the strategic plan. I don't know who wants to take it, but we do have a portion of the strategic plan that we're front loading to discuss facilities and our ongoing school consolidation conversations.
Yeah, I can start. I know that was a big reason for me for prioritizing that the strategic plan and that the budget, in order to, higher ed elements to help us facilitate it, was part of our budget for this year. And it's not a fun conversation. There's no way to talk about school consolidations and feel great coming out of that, because once again, change is hard, and watching places that hold such reach or deep community roots and values. I was a Joy Cubby Bear when that school ceased to be an elementary school. Something hurt as part of that. So acknowledging those feelings and acknowledging that there will be a community sense of grief as a part of this conversation, but also looking at the fact that if we approach school consolidations thoughtfully with lots of community voices involved, there's an entire team strictly looking at facilities that then will work back with the steering team and work with all these different layers. It can be a decision that we make together, acknowledging that Fairbanks isn't what Fairbanks was population-wise or as far as what our needs are for our schools as it was 30 years ago. And so hopefully my goal is through school consolidations, we end up offering something better to our students. We are able to address a lower PTR. We are able to offer a superior education to the students that are currently here and prioritize students over square footage of buildings.
Beautifully said. I mean, there's no reason to go through all of this work if it's not leading to better educational services and opportunities on the other side of that for our students. And so that's really where it's at in terms of our school district going through this process. And I'm really hopeful that through this process, I won't say it's the end of the conversation, but it's the end of the conversation for a while. I think our community needs stability. Our school district needs stability. And so moving forward with a plan that we can all live with for the next, hopefully 5 to 8 years. And it really is right sized for the district that we're currently operating in.
I think it's also important to consider that this is not a Fairbanks exclusive conversation. There are districts across the country who are facing really difficult challenges like this. And I think I don't see as many, just in my perspective, which is limited, but I'd say relatively large in terms of the pulse across the country. I think Fairbanks is in a good situation in terms of being proactive around this, because the last thing you want to do is to be reactive, because that's when that thoughtful approach can't really be put into place. You aren't able to engage the community in those thoughtful conversations and those dialogues around what the future of the district is going to look like. And without those conversations, then it leads to a lot of friction and a lot of hard feelings. So I commend the district for taking the step to think about this really comprehensively right now, so that you can, one of my favorite phrases, I don't know where it comes from or who it comes from, but it's the idea of staying ready so you don't have to get ready. And that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so nice to have you here. I mean, offering that national perspective. We often forget we're at the end of the road, literally, and always think that these issues are only facing Fairbanks and they're not facing other school districts either in the state or across the country. And so another value proposition for Ed Elements being here and getting to see all the things that are happening across public education in states across the country. Yeah.
We like to, part of what we like to provide is that perspective and those stories that we're able to gather from other places that we're able to do this work, to also provide a level of accountability to shepherd this process along and make sure that we take the steps that are necessary to get this work done, to build capacity along the way too, and in the protocols that we're running in the design sessions that we're facilitating. Our expert facilitators, Sarah and Ann, are thoughtfully considering ways in which we're building skills of the individuals who are part of those processes. And then we also want to be a critical friend along the way. So not necessarily tell you what you want to know, but also what you need to know based on the perspectives that we've gathered.
Yeah, I love that. I think one of the major takeaways from us, we've picked up a lot of those processes that you've worked with the district in the past. One of our, in my mind, one of our biggest success areas that we've had recently is in the implementation of the Alaska READS Act. And I directly attribute that to the idea teams that we created. And those idea teams were modeled after the teams that we had coming out of COVID and the groups that we brought together and the processes we used to put those plans in place. And it was very similar to the work that we did leading up to READS Act implementation.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I do want to touch on, you mentioned it just briefly, and this is a bit of a curveball because we didn't talk about it prior.
I knew there'd be a zinger.
You knew there would be a zinger, but I think it's right within your wheelhouse. And so thinking after we've gone through this big process and we have our strategic plan, it is really important to Brandy and I that it doesn't just sit on the shelf, that it's actually active and ongoing. What does that look like then in the next 5 years in terms of the implementation phase?
So there's a couple different things that I like to encourage districts to consider when they get to that place. One is going back to something that we've continued to talk about, which is community engagement. So that how can the community continue to be a process of not only implementing the plan, but reflecting on the implementation of the plan. Another thing is sort of getting organized as a district team to be able to regularly report on and monitor metrics associated with each of those key initiatives and the success criteria attached to them. I think the more that you can make that plan accessible to those who are actually going to use it on a day-to-day basis is really critical, so that like I said, everybody from the classroom level all the way up to central office level, and even those who support the school district from outside of these walls, they know very clearly what their role is in terms of making accomplishments towards those goals. And in that regular reporting process, everyone can sort of stay at a transparent level of how are we doing right now, and what kind of changes do we need to make in order to move the needle faster, or even go a little slower, add some friction in so that we can take our time to make certain decisions. It's also important to keep in mind that while the strategic plan is pretty specific in terms of the focus of what the district should be doing and where their attention should be, it is, for lack of a better term, a North Star for the district to work towards. The ways in which we get towards those goals can be agile, they can be responsive as the longevity of the plan kind of unfolds. And it sort of gives ourselves the permission to not view these things as a checklist of things that we must do, and if we don't do these things, then the plan is going to be unsuccessful. We know that context, new information can change all the time, from year to year, from minute to minute sometimes. So the way in which we are crafting this plan is not necessarily to tell everyone exactly what to do, but to give guidance and serve as a barometer for decision making so that we can alter those plans in a responsive way, or those actions in a responsive way, to ensure that what's being done is being done the most effectively with the latest information that we have at our disposal.
I like something your team has said a whole lot about. It's graphic. You show MapQuest versus Google Maps, and the idea that MapQuest was this stagnant thing we printed out from our computer and we charted our way. And if you went off course, then you're kind of in no man's land, where Google Maps recalibrates. And we look at where we are, and then we say, well, that's not quite working. That's not what we actually wanted. And we adjust. And I like to think of the strategic plan that way. It was a good framework.
I'm glad that resonated.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think we need, in today's world, we need to be able to adjust frequently. When I think of 5 years and how much changes in 5 years compared to, 20 years ago, 5 years was a little bit more static than it is today. And so having that recalibration throughout and having those critical community conversations throughout the plan, I think is going to serve us really well.
I think so too. Yeah. And it's interesting to think about sort of the time span of a strategic plan. Does that mean like our strategic plan needs to be only 1 year? No, that doesn't necessarily give us enough room, enough space to let these ideas breathe and carry them out. Does our strategic plan need to be 20 years? Probably not, because there's going to be a lot of things that change along the way. So we've been saying a couple different numbers, anywhere from 5, 7, 8 years. What this process also allows us to do is to check in on a regular basis to say, like, hey, is this plan, are we good? Like, have we made adequate progress on these goals? Or do we need to give ourselves a little bit more time to say this idea needs a little bit more work until those who are closest to that work are satisfied with its the fidelity of its implementation, the effectiveness, and ultimately the impact that it's going to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Brandy, I think we're bringing it to a close. Anything else you would like to say to the community on strategic planning?
I guess just that the conversation's not over. It's just starting. So please engage with us. I know that EdElements is going to be presenting at our board meeting next week, and that's a great way for people to learn more about the strategic planning process. There are so many community members who are involved now in the process too that you can reach out to. And see, and you can talk to board members, but it's not just board members. We have state representatives, we have community representatives. We really tried to dig deep and find people that represent the whole of Fairbanks, not just one section. And we want to hear from you. I was so excited to hear that we got over 3,500 people to just respond to our survey, and then 100 plus more to come to our focus groups. That's more engagement than I think we've seen in a long time. And that means this plan has a chance of really being successful because we have more voices in the room.
Absolutely. And in the end, it's going to lead to improved educational outcomes for our students, which is the amazing thing about it. So super excited about that. Not sure when this podcast is going to drop. So EdElements will be presenting to the board on September 17th. If it drops before then, please tune into the board meeting. If it drops after that, you can go back and listen to that recording on our district website, and you can see where we're at in the roadmap of strategic planning. I'm excited that you tuned in here today because I do think this is a deep dive into the strategic planning process for our district, which is a great informational session. I did want to do a shout out, but this is not normal, but to Jen Gunderson. I have a new shirt that says I love public schools. So I did purchase this shirt, but you can also go purchase this shirt on Etsy with Jen Gunderson. We love seeing people that are supporting our public schools, not only here in Fairbanks, but across the state. And I think it's really cool artwork that she's doing to show her love for public schools. And so this is going to be my new Friday outfit. I think different colors are available.
I like it.
And I love the new shirt. It's comfortable.
I have a purple
good on
one
you,
too
too.
that I absolutely love too.
My wife wore the purple one today because her school's color is purple. So
Now I need to get me one.
yeah, we'll get you hooked up.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in today. This is the Alaska Adventure Podcast with Dr. Luke Meinert, and it was a great conversation. Thanks for having it, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.
Thank you for embarking on this Alaska Adventure with us. Hit that subscribe button and we'll meet you on the next episode.